Permaculture in Action, Creating a Preferred Future. This is the first in a set of 4 presentations. What's the goal of this series? To provide useful and practical information to advance the cause of paradigm shift, in terms of social, economic, political, environmental conditions, lifestyles at home, in the neighborhood, in the community, in our conversations. I hope to provide some info when you have conversations about these issues that maybe something you learn here can help persuade others of the need for deep changes in our lifestyles and what we're doing as individuals and as a nation and a world, as a matter of fact. So this is the contents for today's presentation here, September 24, part 1 of the 4-part series. Permaculture, economics, aspects of a preferred future. And we're going to get a beginning. We'll start on another part of the presentation called Allies, Assets, and Actions. And what you see right here, this is what we're going to touch on today. I think it's really important to have a recognition of the challenges we have in terms of our economic system. We'll get into that very shortly. I just want to quickly mention the other 3 presentations. These are all on Saturdays at 11 o'clock and with the same Zoom information as well. So next week, we'll look at different projects from all over the country, great stories of people who are, in my thinking, already to an appreciable degree living in a preferred future. We'll hear stories from all over the country. Presentation 3, we'll start out by pushing back on cars. I've got a great interest in urban land use, planning and transportation. And that plays an important part in actually all of these presentations, is transportation and urban land use. But in presentation 3, we'll also talk about economic and political democracy, reaching out to the wider world. In presentation 4, I'll talk about and show some pictures of places that I spent 3 months this past summer in Europe and visiting some just wonderful places. I love Europe, and I wouldn't at all say that Europe is the perfect location, but there's a lot there that I find very attractive in terms of what are the different aspects of a culture, a place to live, a place to share space with other people. There are a lot of things in Europe that I wish we had more of here. So then let's just go here. The main points of interest, we'll focus on some of these items of interest in the different presentations, but this is definitely have an agenda here, and talking about the needs of capitalism. Paradigm shift starts at home. Reducing our ecological footprints is just a critical need. How do we pay for that? I'll talk a little bit about the double benefit, and we'll get a little bit of a start on allies and assets to work with. And we'll also touch a bit on what would be some of the characteristics of a preferred future. It would be very different from what we have right now. So we'll take a look at all these in this particular presentation, part 1. I'm hoping to do this in something more or less like an hour, and we can have some conversation if people like afterwards. It's a beautiful day here in Eugene. I don't want to stay inside for too long. And I'll also add that I mentioned that this will be on YouTube. There's a fair amount of content in text that I'm going to show that I'm suggesting if you want to follow up, you can go to YouTube in about a week or less and spend a little bit more time with this, because I have a lot of information that I'm not going to detail in this live presentation right now. So you can go back on YouTube and you can pause on any slide and you can take a closer look. I think that's important. So here's just a quick look at some of the key words and concepts that we're going to take a look at. And this is for the entire 4-part series as well. This isn't just today, but you can take a closer look at this if you like on YouTube. But for today, we'll actually take a little bit of a look at the cargo cult, economic mythologies, external costs is a big issue, the double benefit, supersizing, a quick look at the footprint calculator. And of course, permaculture is a very important aspect of my interest as well. So a critique of capitalism, this is just important. And it's a conversation that we really need to have. It's sort of like the elephant in the closet. What do we do when an economic system is inappropriate for a wide range of reasons? We read about those reasons every day. It's environmental, it's social, it's injustice of various kinds, it's politics. I ask a question, an economic system that prioritizes the well-being of people and planet, would it be responsible for these products right here? Junk food, cars, freeways, suburbia, climate change. A responsible economic system would not be producing these outcomes. So what do? We create alternatives, and I'm sure those of us here are already very interested in alternatives. And that's not just for the future, that's for the present now. There's no reason to wait, and I'm sure most of us here are already making changes in our own lives as well. And it's great to hear those kinds of stories. As I mentioned, particularly in part 2, we're going to hear awesome stories about what people are doing in their communities. But this is more what I would see an economic system have as focus. People need security, people need healthcare, people need housing. These are just a few of the aspects I would see of a humane economic system. And of course, as a point of departure, it all needs to fit within the boundaries of the natural world. That is just the point of departure right there. And of course, permaculture is a powerful tool that can help us organize our thinking and also help organizing our designs and our plans for actually turning these ideas into 3 dimensions. In presentation 2, I'll show a little bit of what I've done here on my own suburban property. That's in the realm of allies, assets, and actions. I think we all have assets in our own lives that we can put to good use to become models and pioneers of a preferred future. So let's just take a quick look. Permaculture has a series of principles. What I've done here is I've made this little chart. These are the permaculture principles right here. This is how capitalism treats those principles, and this is how permaculture treats its own principles. I'm not going to go through all of that, but just a couple. For example, self-regulation is an ideal of permaculture. A system is able to adapt and itself to changing conditions so that that system produces what it needs to produce in a desirable way. And of course, that desirable way has social and economic and environmental aspects to it. Capitalism is not responsible. It's not accountable to the products that it creates. And of course, permaculture is designed to be self-regulating. Here's another good one. Permaculture ideal small and slow solutions to design needs. And of course, when you can think, for example, one of my favorite again, transportation, capitalism, products are in excess size. I'll introduce a term I like a lot, and that is supersize the solution. Make the solution in capitalism as complex and energy and resource consuming as possible. That's what capitalism does. It's not slow and small solutions. It likes to supersize simply because it creates more economic activity. So you can take a look on YouTube if you like and look closer at that. Myths of capitalism. There are a number of myths. These are just a few. Informed choice, efficiency, of course, the magic hand, the idea that capitalism and democracy go together, and the idea that a rising tide will lift all boats. These are nice ideas, but they're not a reality. So one of the primary characteristics I need to point out, I mentioned already, of capitalism is to supersize consumption, to create products and entire lifestyles. Our civilization is based on overconsumption in just virtually every category of human need we can think of. Housing, food, recreation, transportation. Excess consumption is the fuel of capitalism. One of the myths is informed choice. And what informed choice simply means is that when you're buying something, you know something about the product, so you can choose the product that fits your needs. Simple, great idea, but informed choice does not exist in our economic system. The economic system does not tell an honest story. The price we pay for products and services is not an honest story. We should be acquainted with a term called externalized cost. What that means is the price we pay doesn't cover all the damage, the consequences of using that product. And of course, climate change is a great example of external costs. When you think of using a car and the gasoline, where does that gasoline, where does that petroleum come from? That is an item that we need to pay more attention to. Much of the oil, of course, this particular picture from the Amazon, the external cost here is we don't see it, but these people who live in the Ecuador Amazon, they see the results because to a large degree, their livelihoods have been damaged or ruined because of oil exploration and production. And of course, pollution is another external cost. A military that we spend something like $700 billion a year on, that's an external cost because it exists to safeguard access to the resources and the global conditions that permit commerce and the globalized economy to function. All kinds of medical care is totally avoidable. The junk food, the automobile accidents, a culture that creates a lot of unhappy people. How many people are taking mood altering drugs because they're bummed out? I can understand how so many people would not be happy living with some of the conditions that many people do. These are all external costs of the economic system. Their profits, the big companies don't pay those costs. People pay those costs, and the environment pays those costs. Economic efficiency, these are all related. This is related to external costs, but the ideal here, the mythology is that capitalism is the most efficient way to allocate resources. And it really couldn't be further from the truth. Ideally, efficiency means how can you take care of a task and use as little resources and as little effort as possible. That's basically what efficiency is, to get the most for your inputs. But cities dependent on cars are not efficient. The footprints that are necessary are damaging to the planet. Suburbia is not an efficient form of housing. The cost of the materials and the energy to supply suburbia, we can take care of housing needs with far less damage to the natural world. And of course, here we are. These are all aspects of suburbia, the freeways, the oversized houses. This is an enormous amount of money spent on this infrastructure. And of course, this enormous amount of money creates a lot of jobs as well. Our economic system depends, as it's set up right now, on overconsumption, and millions of jobs depend on overconsumption. It's a big problem. There's no easy exit to the situation that we've created here. But obviously, because of the condition of the planet, and if we can look the condition of our own society, there are other choices to be made. And that's what this is all about, is creating the awareness of other choices and some ideas about how to move towards those other choices. Efficiency, when you look at a pie chart like this, these are different sectors of the economy. An economy is a complex item. There's administration, there's retail sales, there's healthcare, there's transportation, there's lots of different sectors of an economy. And when you look at the different sectors of our economy, that you'll find that millions of jobs exist to repair the damage caused by millions of other jobs. That is absolutely astonishing to contemplate that. And this is the opposite of efficient. When you're consciously making problems that are going to need to be repaired, that's a dishonest economic system. It's an extremely inefficient economic system. And we'll return to this idea in a little bit when we talk about the double benefit. That's a very interesting concept, the double benefit. And these are just a few types of jobs that, in my thinking, there wouldn't be so many jobs in this realm in a sustainable preferred future. We'll get a little bit more detail into that realm shortly, but a sustainable preferred future would look very, very different from what we have right now. The magic hand, of course, we've all heard the magic hand of the marketplace. This is a definition I took right off the internet. I didn't make this one up. This is just right off the internet. It's a good definition. The magic hand, through individual self-interest and freedom of production, as well as consumption, the best interests of society as a whole are fulfilled. I can't think of a much bigger fantasy than that, that the pollution, the results of junk food, the externalized cost, the clear-cut forests, the oversized houses that have huge environmental impact, climate change. Are these the best interest of society? Of course they're not. The magic hand is an extreme mythology. Is capitalism a good fit for democracy? Capitalism, as part of its game plan, is to concentrate wealth. We've all seen this kind of information, whether it's in a pie chart or different forms. The wealthiest 20% of Americans own over 80% of the wealth of the country. And of course, there are many people who have written about this and say this is not a desirable condition when you have so few people owning so much. That's not only the concentration of wealth, it's the concentration of political power too, because a lot of that money ends up essentially buying the political system. I can't think of a more inaccurate statement that capitalism and democracy go together. They really don't. This is something I just read actually just yesterday. I read the New York Times, and there's a lot of information about New York City, of course. And what this article was about was explaining how older, basically affordable housing is being torn down in New York City, like this building right here. This is being torn down. It has been torn down. And this is what replaces it, a much larger building. Well, that's not necessarily a bad idea, but the article explained that the affordable housing is going away, and this much larger building actually contains fewer residents than this one here, even though it's 4 or 5 times larger, because there's more money to be made by building luxury residents. And of course, affordable housing is a big problem all over the country, but the economic system says build luxury for the few who can pay for it, because you'll make more money that way. And this is only one example of capitalism at work. I'll just say this about American exceptionalism. It's a term we've heard many times about how Americans are really the exceptional people with what they've done to build such a wealthy, affluent, powerful country. Well, Americans have done that. It is a wealthy, affluent, powerful country. There's no doubt about that. But the exceptionalism in my thinking is that it's over-consuming that's created the wealth for the military and this country's cultural influence all over the world. It's excess and dishonesty. It's turning nature into money. That's what I think about American exceptionalism. Americans certainly have been successful in economic terms, but the external costs have been enormous. Here's a collage I made. The consumer culture that we live in is essentially a cargo cult. If you know what a cargo cult is, the cargo cults occurred during World War II when the American military was moving west in the Pacific Ocean towards Japan to try to end the war. I'm not going to comment on that, but the US had to set up military bases on all these different islands, you know, to try to win the war. Very reasonable. So when the American military landed with these landing ships on these small islands, a lot of the people on those small islands had never seen anything like this before. And they quickly became very impressed with all the American technology, with their trucks, with their radar, with all the infrastructure the Americans needed to create their bases for the war effort. And they sort of drew the local people into the value of all of this infrastructure. And some local people had jobs and they saw all the goings on. And finally, when the war ended, the US military packed up and they left. Well, the local people were really sad because all that cool stuff was gone. So they started the cargo cult. They began to imitate what they saw of the American military. They built bamboo airplanes. They marched around in fields like the soldiers. They tried to imitate the American presence on those islands, thinking if they did that, then they would be able to attract all this stuff again, that the ships would return and all the gear would return. Well, that is the cargo cult. I compare the cargo cult on those islands with our consumer society. You behave in a certain way, you do the rituals of getting the right kind of a job, if you're lucky enough to have the right kind of a job, the borrowing money, going into debt, the rituals and the actions that the Pacific Islanders engaged in has a counterpart in the way people behave now, with the ideal, the goal that they're going to have lots of stuff, the consumer culture that people can buy and live in big houses and have big cars. So in my thinking, we also live in a cargo cult here. And one of the products of this thinking is the profits from damaging products and practices are more important to the economic system than the well-being of people and planet. And suburbia, with its enormous social, economic, and environmental footprint, is a cornerstone of the nation's economy. So I just want to do a little short example of capitalism at work. As I mentioned, I'm very interested in urban land use and transportation issues. So how did suburbia happen? How did the automobile culture have its origin? How is it that freeways were bulldozed through mostly minority neighborhoods in countless cities around the United States so white suburban commuters could go downtown? There's a story behind this. So let's just take a look at a little bit of history of suburbia. Interestingly, the first commuting suburb, some would say, was Brooklyn, New York, and the steam ferry taking people to Manhattan. This is when steam became a reliable enough form of transportation to have a schedule. People could live in a much more quiet, green place, which that was Brooklyn in the early 1900s, 1820. So people commuted 100 years before automobiles. Somewhat later, the omnibus, basically an urban stagecoach, that's in the late 1800s, 1870, 1880. The horse railway was another transportation innovation, the electric trolley, all these built on each other. That you can see the evolution of transportation. And then, of course, in the early part of the 20th century, the automobile became much more common. So transportation has a huge effect on urban design. And as transportation systems became more sophisticated, it allowed cities to spread out more. There was a lot of money to be made with cars, and that is a big reason why our cities are shaped the way they are. But other reasons are that in the period of the Great Depression, a lot of people were out of work, particularly in the construction industry. And the government at that point had little interest in housing policy, but there was government intervention in the Great Depression to get people back to work. A lot of people didn't have jobs. So government housing policy began in the 1930s. And this policy favored suburbia because suburbia could put people back to work. Building these houses, these suburban houses, was a part of that policy because suburban houses create more jobs than smaller apartments, more responsible, more human scale types of housing approaches. So when you think about suburbia, it has much of its origin and fast forward because of housing policies in the Great Depression. To a large degree, suburbia was and still is a make work project. It's put people to work. But of course, the external costs of suburbia are enormous. Another big boost to suburbia was after World War II. After World War II, hundreds of thousands of soldiers came back from the war. They needed places to live. Government housing policy once again favored suburbia at the expense of more dense inner city types of construction. And of course, part of suburbia, the characteristic of suburbia was that it had a very racist component too. This is where the term redlining came from, was to discourage non-white people to move into suburban neighborhoods. So there were these policies, and these policies were very much at the behest of the interests that had cars, highways, and construction. These were the businesses that had the money to influence government policy. This is it's a historical fact. The interstate highways were also another huge boost to suburbia. Eisenhower started the interstate highway system in 1956, and of course, this was a big boost to automobile interests. The highways opened up land near the cities that could be suburbanized. And of course, we had the freeways going through established neighborhoods, so the mostly white commuters could go to their jobs downtown. This is a big issue right now with much of the interstate highway infrastructure getting old. Do we want to rebuild and repair the old freeways, or do we want to try to correct a lot of the mistakes that were made that more and more planners are being aware of how the interstate highways and these urban freeways so severely damaged so many cities? This is a debate I read about a lot because I'm interested in all this. Another aspect of economic interests having a huge impact. Before there were so many cars, this is what a street looked like. I'm sure this is Manhattan. I think it's a mistake to over idealize this type of a picture here. This is very dense living right here. Probably sanitation and public health was very challenged at this time. I don't think that it's smart to say, well, let's recreate this kind of urban living. I don't think anybody is exactly saying that, but what this picture does show is that streets used to be for people, and with the advent of the automobile, streets became the province of automobiles over a period of time. The term jaywalking is applied. Of course, we know that when you cross a street in the middle of the street, that's known as jaywalking. Well, the short history of jaywalking is that a jay was a term referring to somebody from the country. This was in 1910, 1915, this period of history. A jay was somebody from the country who didn't know how to behave in the city. So the term jaywalking came about as a purposeful campaign by automobile interests to get people off the streets to make room for cars. And the jaywalking became a promotion by these economic interests and car clubs to shame people to stay off the streets because there were more and more cars. And of course, more and more people were being hit by cars too. but over a period of time, the streets went from something like this to more something like this. Of course, this is much more modern right now. This is Toronto, Canada. It could be one of thousands of different cities and towns. Cars own the street and the people are off to the side, even though in many pictures there's more people on the sidewalks than there are in the street. But cars have managed to impose themselves on countless urban locations. This is I saw this picture for the first time just a few days ago. This is Tampa, Florida. I think the picture is a little dated right here. I think Tampa is a little bit bigger than this. I think this picture may be from the 60s or something. But you see this neighborhood over here and you see this neighborhood over here. This used to be all the same neighborhood. There didn't used to be this interstate highway right through the middle. How are you going to go visit? You live here and you want to visit somebody over here. You're not going to go across there. These highways, urban freeways, just damage so many cities in so many ways. This picture here looks like, oh gosh, they're actually building another suburban freeway. Well, actually, this is in Rochester, New York. This picture is more current. More cities are actually beginning to deconstruct existing freeways. Not a lot of cities, but more cities are looking to do that, and some are actually doing it. This was an urban freeway right here, and it's being deconstructed. I think that's really amazing. That fits within the realm of pushing back on cars. This image here is a scale comparison between Atlanta, Georgia, and Barcelona, Spain. This is the urban footprint of Atlanta. This is the urban footprint of Barcelona. Both cities have approximately the same population. Atlanta is ruled by automobiles and suburbia. It takes up approximately 25 times more space than Barcelona. I spent about a week in Barcelona this last summer and I absolutely fell in love with Barcelona. It's one of the most humane cities I've seen, or at least the part of Barcelona that I was in. It was in the older part. The fourth presentation that I make in this series, I'll do a little show and tell of Barcelona and you'll understand why. But is there enough money to repair this urban land use right now, to reduce ecological footprints, to make Atlanta at least more or less sustainable? I don't think so. This could be Houston, it could be Denver, could be LA, could be any one of dozens of cities in the United States. They're almost all like this. We built ourselves into an enormous corner. I don't think there's any way out of it, and are paying the price for this type of land use is only in the early going right now. There's not enough money to repair the damage. So given all these problems about our economic system and all the damage that is causing, we've heard the quote, "The American way of life is non-negotiable." That is certainly one of the most arrogant statements that I've ever heard. Several politicians have been credited with saying that the American way of life is non-negotiable. What that says to me is there are powerful people and powerful interests that are willing to drag you, me, and everybody else along in their vision of what our society should look like. This is basically totalitarian. It forces people to not to necessarily buy full in to this idea, but I don't like this idea, but I'm affected by it every day. And I don't even live in a big city. Here in Eugene is comparatively a fairly livable sort of city. But the people who are making the policy and control the economy and control the media, they are so attached to their society of overconsumption that they're saying there's no alternative to the way we live. Well, I would say to a substantial degree that's true, but what this presentation, and I think what all of us are very interested in, is yes, we can, within this larger construction, we can create alternatives, and many people are creating alternatives. In part 3, I'll talk a little bit about the idea of truth and reconciliation for capitalism. Given all the damage caused by capitalism, there's a need for some type of accounting. Do I expect to see this? Not in a mainstream way, but there's every good reason to identify this economic system for what it is, and truth and reconciliation to try to identify some kind of accountability and justice for what this economic system does to people and planet. I think is a very intriguing thought. I've put some thought into this. So in part 3, I'll spend a little bit of time about truth and reconciliation for capitalism. So we're going to shift just a little bit right now. We're going to go into aspects of a preferred future. We have a good idea why there's a need and a preference for a preferred future in the thinking of many people. What would be some of the aspects? What would a preferred future look like? Of course, people have been thinking about this and writing stories, books, articles. What would a sustainable future look like? A lot of thoughts going into that, even within the mainstream. So for me, the point of departure is to realize that capitalism as we know it and its consumer culture is not going to take us to the preferred future. The control by economic interests to keep doing the same thing is just too strong. It's too powerful. It's not designed to self-regulate. I don't think capitalism has any potential at all for doing what's necessary to be a partner for a society and a way of life that fits within the boundaries of the natural world. It just can't do it. So what might a preferred sustainable future look like? As mentioned, it would have to exist within the boundaries of the natural world. Well, what are those boundaries? A little bit subject to interpretation, but I think we can do a lot better than what we're doing right now. And of course, those boundaries apply to our lifestyles, the food we eat, our transportation, our housing. Another aspect of a preferred future, I think everything will cost a lot more and people will make less money. If we're going to be sustainable, then that's what I think the future is going to look like. Is this going to mean that we're using candles and we're riding all on bikes? I don't think so, not at all. I think a preferred future would be preferable to lots of people if they had a chance to experience it. So I'm an optimist. I'm not one who thinks, oh, we're going to go back to live like our grandparents. I don't want to do that. But I think by making conscious choices, how are we purposeful with our time and money? How can we help bring about a preferred future? And it very possibly could be in many ways preferable to what we have right now. I want to say a couple things about the wisdom of the world's great spiritual traditions and permaculture, reducing eco footprints. What do we do with our time and money? And how can we help pay for these changes? I'm just going to say a couple things. Go back on YouTube and you can spend a little bit more time on this particular topic. But essentially right now, our affluence is subsidized by externalizing the cost. Our affluence is bought at the expense of public health and the natural world. And if we're going to be sustainable, we can't continue those types of damages. A sustainable in economy, society, everything will cost more and people will have less buying power. Products need to tell the truth. And when products and services account for the damage they do and internalize the cost, so the price covers those expenses, everything is going to cost a lot more. Some people have speculated that a gallon of gasoline should cost anywhere from $20 to $30 to $40 of gasoline per gallon of gasoline to account for the external costs. That's just one example right there. Everything would cost a lot more. And because things would cost more, it'd be less possible to buy all this stuff. There would be far less economic activity. There would be less jobs to produce the stuff because there wouldn't be so much capacity for buying so many products. A lot of jobs would be lost, absolutely. But we can organize ourselves in different ways to take care of needs as well. And again, this could be even a better situation, but it's also important to be aware that not all economics requires money. There's forms of economics that can be more personal, can be trade, can be barter. I think there's going to be a lot more of that type of economics in our future. So taking a little bit of a closer look, food choices, of course, we know that plant-based diets are far less demanding on the environment. A preferred future, we probably spend a lot more time closer to home. I think there can still be travel. Absolutely. Trains are a wonderful way to travel. More time with friends and family, more active transportation. And of course, not everybody can use a bike, but there's ways to take care of transportation that is far less dependent on automobiles, less shopping for recreation. We'll be doing a lot more thrift type shopping. And then, of course, there's lots of examples of this preferred future already happening. We'll see all these pictures in further parts of this 4-part series. We'll see all of these. My neighborhood, this is Barcelona, this is New York City, Syracuse, New York. So we'll see more great stories of the preferred future. The consumer culture versus the preferred future. So I've just compared an action on the consumer culture side and what might that look like in a preferred future. For example, a suburban strip mall parking lot. In my preferred future, that strip mall parking lot would be built on and could become a dispersed small downtown to serve the nearby neighborhood so people don't have to drive so much. I'll return to that topic in a future presentation. A distant vacation compared to a nearby vacation. Market capitalism compared to permaculture. Again, you can check this out on YouTube and you can pause on this and take a closer look, and you can probably think of some of your own comparisons. What would you put in the consumer culture list here, and what would your preferred future look like? And of course, as mentioned, a lot of jobs won't make the cut to a preferred future, and many will adapt, and there'll be new jobs too. There'll be new jobs in my ideal, repairing the damage caused by the consumer culture. And of course, permaculture is a wonderful, powerful tool for helping us make this transformation. I want to just mention one of the permaculture principles is called the edge. When there's an edge, between a couple of different types of systems. It could be an edge between habitats. It could be an edge that is more social. It could be an edge that is historical. I think we're in an edge right now, in an edge being a place that's particularly has particular potentials and possibilities, because it's where two different systems come up and contact each other. That's an edge. Think about like sunlight and shade. That's an interesting habitat edge. Well, we're at an edge in history where we already know that we've got some big problems, but we already know that there are a lot of thinking and a lot of movement to address those problems. So we're partly in the old world of capitalism and growth and overconsumption, and we're also in a place where there's lots of discussion about sustainability and how do we do something about climate change and eliminate fossil fuels. We're on an edge where these two systems are in contact with each other. That's an historical edge. My thinking, we should make use of the good stuff that the existing mainstream economy does provide, and there's lots of good stuff, and combine that with the promising new ideals and some new technologies that the future is already kind of coming into some sort of a focus. So we're on an edge to make the best of the old and take the best of the new. That's what this means to me, the historical edge. But we have to keep in mind that the moving forward has to fit within the boundaries of the natural world. And in so many different ways, I don't think that's going to happen. The problems and the disasters we've created are more seen as economic opportunities to make use of, to exploit, to sell products, rather than a wake-up call to say, we can't keep doing this. So that's the edge. So let's just take a little quick look at reducing eco footprints. This is a core aspect of a preferred future, is reducing our ecological footprints. This map right here is from the New Economics Foundation. It shows by color the footprints of different countries all over the world, and it's color coded, of course, right here. For example, the information here suggests, say for the United States, how many planet Earths would be necessary for everybody in the world to live like the average American. Of course, most of us probably know something about that. Is it 4, is it 5, or it's 6? In South America, most of the countries, more like 1 or 2 planet Earths for the average person. In Brazil, to everyone in the world to live like that, maybe it take 1 or 2 planets. Of course, Uruguay seems to be a little more affluent than most of South America, but the United States has the largest eco footprint per person of anywhere in the world outside of some place like this rich country. This may be Qatar in the Middle East. And it shows, if you've been anywhere else in the world, you know that Americans have an enormous eco footprint. So reducing that eco footprint to live within the boundaries of the natural world is a high priority and an extremely problematic task, because most people don't want to reduce their ecological footprints. But a place to start to gain some kind of an idea of our condition. This is the footprint calculator. You can go online, you can find it, do a search, footprint calculator. There may be more than one calculator. There's different ways to assess our footprints, but this is a pretty good one right here, footprintcalculator.org. And what the calculator does is it asks questions about your lifestyle, your food, your transportation, how many people live in your house, what do you do in your spare time. The footprint calculator gives you choices and you answer these questions on the calculator. And then at the end, the calculator will give you a score, how many planet Earths would be necessary for everybody in the world to live like you. Is this the final word? Probably not. I think after kind of testing it and doing some playing around with this, I think it's a little bit too sympathetic. Actually, I think the footprint calculator could be a little bit more hard-nosed, actually. But if you do this, then you begin to gain some kind of a sense of your own consuming and hopefully make some changes in that, because the planet can't provide an American style of living for everybody. And even in affluent Northern Europe, even their footprints were something in the realm of half of the United States. Even their footprints are way too large also. So the goals of downsizing, we have to use our resources more effectively. When we downsize, this is a really important one. When we don't buy the products that don't fit a preferred future, then market forces can come into play. If nobody is making money selling cars because people aren't buying them, then we'll have fewer cars. When people quit buying junk food or all kinds of other products, if there's no money to be made, then those inappropriate products won't be fabricated. Market choice, market forces are a reality. They can work. Of course, natural food used to be kind of a fringe, but now everywhere's got organic food. That's positive. There are large-scale examples of changes in public behavior that we can call on. We need to go beyond anything that's happened so far. But when we buy less of the products that don't fit a preferred future, then the companies that create those products, they don't have as much money and they don't have as much political and social influence either. So as we move away from those inappropriate products, we begin to reduce the power of those products and those corporations as well. And of course, where do we downsize? Everywhere in our lives. But this graphic here is, this is the 20% that owns 80% of everything. That's what this part of the pie chart. This is a more of a one Earth size of economy for the United States. So if there was an equitable economy where basically people had enough, maybe not exactly the same, but would the 20% that now have all of this, would they voluntarily downsize to this? I kind of doubt it. But what this does is it illustrates the immensity of the issue. It's a huge issue. It's a huge problem. There's no easy way out from the circumstances that we've created here. Allies, assets, and actions, and this is the home stretch. This will go for just a few minutes right here. What we want to do with this part is to lay the groundwork for what's going to happen next week. So we are on the home stretch of our presentation. Allies, assets, and actions. What do we do with our own time, money, and imaginations? Almost any city or town has more allies and assets to work with than we realize. Sure. So essentially, what are the products, or what are the projects? What are the allies and assets in action? What are they doing in real world? prioritizing our time and money. There's social assets, there's physical assets. So this is a virtuous triangle that, that illustrates the dynamics of allies, assets, and actions. Our assets can be our own lives, our assets can be our suburban properties, our assets can be the relationships that we have with other people, their social, economic, political, environmental assets. The allies are the different organizations in our cities that we can be partners with if we approach them and we recognize that we do have so much common cause. When you have assets and allies, then that makes people start thinking about, okay, how can we make use of these assets and work with these allies? That turns into actions. And when you do more actions, you create more assets and you create more allies. When you have actions and assets working together, then you create more allies. Each two of these working with each other creates more of the third. That's the virtuous triangle right here. Downsizing, what do we do with our time and money? Do we put our time and money into the status quo, or we put our time and money into a preferred future for healthy people and healthy planet? One example, this graphic is my own property here in Eugene. My kitchen dates from the mid 1950s. My house has never been remodeled. Instead of remodeling my house, I've invested in turning my place into an example of what suburbia can look like. It's a lot of permaculture features here at my house. I've put my time and money into investing in a preferred future. That's what I've done. Instead of buying a new car, instead of going for a cruise, this is what I've done to improve my own preparedness, my own resilience, my own home economics is what I've done. Millions of other people can do something like this, their own version of doing this as well. Where does our time and money go? And given what we currently spend money on, there's no shortage of money to create a preferred future. It's just how do we invest it? We can do that in our own lives. I'm certainly not suggesting that it's going to be easy to repurpose the money that goes into building this, to repurpose that money into permaculture ideas and permaculture projects. But that's what we need to be thinking about, is how can we invest in a preferred future rather than shopping or spectator sports or the military or medical expenses that are completely avoidable. Many of them are. So there's no shortage of time and money for paradigm shift. And we start at home and then we try to enlarge that with our friends and neighbors and our communities. The double benefit basically means that when we are smart with our time and money, we don't buy the products that don't fit a preferred future. So we save that money and invest that in a preferred future. But when we don't buy the inappropriate, hazardous products that externalize their cost on people and planet, we don't have to spend the money to repair the damage. That's the double benefit. We both invest smart in the first place, but when we invest smart, and what I mean investing is in our own lives, not the stock market, but in our own lives and communities, when we do that, then we don't have to spend so much money repairing the damage that's the result of making bad choices with what we do with our time and money. That's the double benefit, and it works at a personal scale because I experienced that. I know other people who experience the double benefit in their own lives. What if we did that in our communities and spending instead of the freeways. We started spending money on public transportation and repairing the damage. That's with the double benefit. This is an idealized neighborhood. This is actually my house right here. These are all the houses around me. What if people had the imagination and decided with their time and money to turn our nothing unusual suburban neighborhood into this permaculture Shangri-La right here? There's no reason why this couldn't happen. Is people just would benefit by knowing what the potentials are and how they could participate. My neighbor here doing some of this, my neighbor here doing some of this. Several people on my block already making some changes this way, but this is something that's an ideal. What could our block look like if we decided to apply our time and money in that way? I made reference to this before. This is a strip mall just a mile away from where I live. It's just a typical suburban strip mall. There's probably 5 acres of parking lot right here. There's the big grocery store, and there's the restaurants and the pet food, and there's Goodwill, and there's some actual businesses here. But how would it be to turn this location and thousands of others into a micro downtown to build residential and new businesses on the parking lot in a way that takes care of more needs for the people who live nearby? This parking lot could be sort of a sub downtown that could take care of a lot more people's needs so they didn't have to drive so much. And then, of course, along with that, this is a busy road right here. Say in this ideal, we take one of those lanes that's currently occupied by cars, and we turn that into bus rapid transit. So there's frequent bus service, so people can take the bus to this nice little suburban downtown. And also some of that street we would convert to a safe place where people could ride bicycles and they felt good about riding a bike and that they were safe and wouldn't be hit by a car. So we do the construction on the parking lot, but we also make this little suburban downtown accessible and safe and desirable. There'd be public space, there'd be higher density types of residential. This is nothing unusual in much of the world. They never even built this in the first place, but we have, once again, assets to work with. This parking lot is actually an enormous asset right there. So in presentation 3, we'll take a closer look at the benefits of the preferred future. This is a chart right here. There's lots more benefits besides that, but we'll take a closer look in presentation 3 about the benefits of creating a preferred future. So we've seen a little bit about supersizing capitalism. The consumer culture is social engineering at a remarkable degree. We can self-empower each other. Paradigm shift starts at home. Reducing our ecological footprints is a priority. The double benefit can help pay for the changes that we want to see. So once again, this is pictures. We'll see more of all of these locations. These are really good stories for part 2 next Saturday, October 1st. This is Hood River, Oregon. This is my neighborhood here. City Repair in Portland, Community Plaza program in New York City, empowering young people in Syracuse, New York. This is actually a group in Mara, Sardinia, where I spent some time building community in Mara, Sardinia. This picture shows suburban farming in Asheville, North Carolina. So next week, we're going to focus on good stories of people already making these changes. So I'm going to say that's enough for right now.